We're gonna go over premature arm bend, and we're gonna shout out Michael Wu from our super chat on YouTube Live on our Garage Strength channel, and we're gonna start right now. So when we're talking about weightlifting technique, we've got to think specifically, what is it, right? We have to go through what good technique is, and that comes along with establishing that technical model. So if we're talking about the clean, ideally you're gonna watch someone like Lu Xiaojun or Jin Chun Kuo, someone along these lines that you can use as a guide for how you need to be moving. So we're gonna have a crash course quickly here, specifically with the clean, because that's what Michael Wu wanted, and we're gonna talk about what good technique is, and then we're gonna go into when premature arm bending actually happens, why it happens, and what you can do to fix it. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is establish that foot width, and that's gonna essentially be putting your foot one length out from where you're gonna be. So now we're gonna put that right foot out from that length period. We have 2021 World Team member, 2022 Senior Pan Am member here, Jacob Horse. He's snatched 143 kilos recently, and he's one of the best pound for pound lifters in the entire country of the United States. And so Jake's gonna demonstrate here some of the key factors. We want those elbows, start perfect. Elbows are gonna be almost directly outside of the knees. So right off the floor, we wanna see those knees clear back. Okay, good, now Paul's right there. And then as his bar comes over the kneecaps, he's gonna slide that bar in through the thighs. And then right here in the clean is where we're gonna start to make contact, about mid-thigh. So it's a little bit lower than it would be with the snatch. As his hips extend, he's gonna push through those heels, and he's going to extend the knees. Then he's gonna shrug the elbows up and back, wrap those elbows around, and that's how you execute a well-performed clean. So let's go back over this really quickly. From the floor to the knee, we want the knees to clear back. As the bar goes over the knees come under, push through a flat foot as long as possible, make contact around mid-thigh. Once we make that contact, elbows go up and back, to keep that bar extremely tight around the chest. If you have a really good cleaner, that bar should go right around the chest, right onto the shelf. And here's where we wanna see about a 90-degree angle from the elbows to the torso and then down through those lats. And that's a good guideline for how you can execute a well-performed clean. Okay, so now we have to go over, when does premature arm bend typically happen? There's really two positions here. So that first issue is gonna be right off the floor. A lot of weightlifters and a lot of other lifters that might start doing cleans, you know, if you have a football player, we might see a position where they actually bend right off the floor, right there, good. Give me two more examples, Jake. Good, one more, a little earlier. Yeah, so what's occurring in this situation is that if someone has a premature arm bend right off the floor, they're not setting their back tight, they're not setting their lats tight. And a really quick fix, this is actually a simpler fix, okay? So if they're doing it right off the box or right off the floor, it's a little bit easier to fix than if they're doing it later on in the lift. And so what I like to cue is to have the wrists, okay? So wrists can be flexed here, and almost thinking about pushing the hands back with your lats, okay? So that's a really good way to set that bar and to set that chest tight. So you can go here, set your lats, and that's gonna help establish more tension right off of the floor. The next position that we typically will see, and this is a really hard area to fix because it's happening at a higher rate, at a higher speed, is gonna be just past the knee. So we'll go just past the knee, even a little bit. So go really slow, and it's knees stay back longer. Yeah, knees stay back and bend. Yep, there, and bring it into the hip. Good, good, do that again. So the knees will stay back, bend it into the hip. So what's happening here, there's two issues, is that the athlete, to pull the bar into the hip, they actually are flexing their elbows. So then what occurs is they get pulled onto their toes. And so you can see Jake struggling to actually do this because he's one of the best weightlifters in the entire world. He got 10th at Worlds in 2021. And so what's occurring is that athletes tend to have weak posterior chains, okay? So to make up for their hip extension that is lacking, they have to bend their elbows to pull into the hip. So some of the things that we can do to fix this is right around the knee, make sure that as the bar comes past the knee, their knees come under and they're through the flat foot. Through flat foot, push through the heels. Okay, so now that's typically the first thing that you'll see is that the bar stays too far back because the knees never reciprocate under. That's the first thing that you've got to look at. The second thing that you've got to look at is, are they popping their heels early? Okay, if their heels are popping early, push the heels. Second thing that we can start to do is, as we get in and we start to make contact, keep staying tight in that upper back. That's that third aspect when we see an arm bend that happens after the knee. Okay, so now we're gonna give you 4 key exercises that you can use to improve this. But before we go into these exercises, make sure that you pick up our Peak Strength app. You can click on the link down below in the description to help you become a freak. First exercise is going to be a pause. So if we have someone who bends right off the floor, we wanna see that individual actually pause at liftoff, okay? So we're gonna go about 2 inches off the floor, pause, 1, 2, 3, then go into the clean. Okay, so I would recommend doing 2 to 3 seconds, pause right at that liftoff, and that's gonna force the athlete to really think about being tighter. When you pause, it makes it a little bit easier to feel that arm bend, and then you can start to alleviate the problem. Now, if we have someone who bends after the knee, remember that's typically because the knees stay back too long and their hamstrings are weak, their posterior chain is weak. So that first issue that we can do to fix that is gonna be a pause just above the knee. Pause, 1, 2, go. And so now when they start to pause there, they start to feel the proper position. When they start to feel the proper position, now they can execute that movement more effectively. The next exercise is gonna be even easier, and this is where you can start to get a little more artistic, and we can go through a pause on the liftoff and then a slow patterning. So Jake's gonna demonstrate. Typically when you lift, you want the rhythm of the lift to sound almost like a zipper, like zip. Okay, so in this case, when we're doing a slow pull, it's gonna be a little bit longer. It'll be like zip, okay? So Jake's gonna demonstrate real slow, like 1, 2, 3, go. So it's a little bit longer to get to that acceleration point, the acceleration point being off the hip. So let's do that again. 3 seconds to the hip. Go, good, good. So now what you can do is you can do the pauses, and then you can do that next rep with a slow pull to try and see if that pause carries over to the actual slow pull. Now the next step, okay, so we're going through a progression of fixing your early arm bend is gonna be using a hang. Remember, one of the main problems, especially if you arm bend past the knee, is that your posterior chain is weak, and to make up for the lack of hip extension, you bend the bar, okay, you actually row the bar in, and that's when everything gets pulled forward and the weight's gonna crash on you. So to do this, to fix this, we could do a pause and we could do a slow pull, or we could even do a high hang clean with a slow eccentric. Okay, good, right there, no, perfect. Give me one more. So the high hang clean with a slow eccentric, that's like 3 seconds on the way down. Pull, good. And now if you have someone who bends off the floor, you can do a low hang clean with that slow eccentric. Good, perfect, perfect, okay. Okay, so that last key exercise is going to be using boxes. And so if we actually arm bend past the knee, we can go off 2 boxes. If we arm bend off the floor, we can go off of 1 box. And we need to establish tension in that pull right away, okay? So it's similar to a deadlifter. A deadlifter is gonna establish tension, and then they're gonna execute that lift. So what Jake's gonna demonstrate here is setting tension and then lifting. So the whole goal is gonna be apply force into that flat foot, keep those arms as long as possible, and they should not bend until after you make contact. Once you make contact, you wanna think, shrug up and back with those elbows, wrap those elbows around the bar. So here we got 2 boxes. Perfect, good, one more. Think shrug real tight, elbows wrap fast. Perfect, good, excellent. So we went over establishing that technical model and who those technical models could actually be. Also, I would recommend using Haley Reichert, who's actually standing behind the cameraman currently, because she has one of the best pound for pound cleans out of all the women in the entire world. Use her as a great technical model. Then we went over why it happens. Weak posterior chain or just not establishing that tension early on. And then we gave you 4 key exercises. You can do pauses off the lift off, pauses above the knee, slow pulls, hangs, and then box work. And remember, you should be clicking on the link down below in our description to pick up our Peak Strength app so that you can become a freak. Because remember, if you want to become a freak, you've always got to cultivate your power. Peace.